Okay, so we have created our basic page. We haven't done anything to it. We've been looking at the built-in components that are given to you by Dreamweaver in order to allow this responsive grid to work, and how that works, the cascade that draws first from the mobile, then to the tablet, and then to the full screen. And so now we've got this grid system. What we got to do is we've got to work with it in order to combine all of our things into a common web page that will work for all the designs that we have, depending upon the viewport that we're looking at. And so the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to be using this as a template. I'm not just building one page off of this. I'm going to build an entire site off of this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this single page, which I haven't even saved yet, into a template. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a file, save as template, and I'm just going to give that template a name. When I save that, it's going to tell me that there are some dependent files that I have not saved yet. And so I'm going to copy those dependent files. And what you will see happens is it creates this templates folder, and inside it, it has the DWT, which is the Dreamweaver template that I was working on. It's got the boilerplate template, boilerplate.css, which is the one that resets all of the browsers to the same level, and then this respondmin.js, which is a JavaScript that allows the different browsers to work with this. Now, I like to store things outside of this templates folder. I'll only store the template file in there. So I'm going to move this boilerplate template into the CSS folder there, just to keep things clean, and it's going to update everything with links to that so that they don't break. And I would update that, and you'll notice that both my responsive test.css and boilerplate.css are both in the same location. Now the other thing that I want to do is I want to keep my scripts in a folder called scripts. And so I will just move that respondmin.js, which is a JavaScript script, into there, updates it, and all that is just cleaning things so that later on, as I add more CSS or scripts, I'll put them in those folders. And that's just a way of managing the workflow and the processes that you do when you're designing. So I now have, you'll notice that this has changed to responsive test.dwt. And there really isn't any content in here yet. There's this content that just tells you some basic rules that you need to do. You need to make sure that, let's take a look at this. When you look at this document, there's the body. There's a bunch of commenting and stuff up here in the head. So there is the elements in the head tag, but we're talking about the content right here. So it's got the links to the different style sheets and to the JavaScript and some comments tags that you can take out if you don't want them there, that point you to the location of additional information that you can do. Now, what I want to do though is I want to come down here, and you'll see this grid container called ClearFix. Using the Dreamweaver template that we're using for this fluid grid, you have to build your entire site inside of this div. And you'll notice that it tells you that you use the insert panel to insert additional fluid grid layout div tags. And so what that's looking at is you come over here to the layout. That's one place, or up in here is another one. And what you can do is add different elements to that. And what it's telling you is that you need to use the that all your layout div tags need to be inside that grid container div tag. So when I come over here to insert, you'll notice that it says insert fluid grid layout div tag. So before I start doing that, first I want to clear this content out of there because that's not part of my website. And I'm just going to delete that, and I'm going to leave myself a space. And I'm going to back out my closing div tag so that I know what that is. Oh, okay, so here's the clear fix, and I also almost made a mistake there right in front of you. Here's the grid container, and that closes here. And so what I was trying to do is delete that div. So we have this first div, and everything has to sit inside of that. It's the one with the class of grid container and the class of clear fix. So when we're in here, it's not refreshing on me. Hold on just a second. Okay, what you just witnessed is what happens sometimes with Dreamweaver, and you can't explain it, but when things start malfunctioning, just not working the way that you expect them to, sometimes the best thing to do is to save what you're doing, close Dreamweaver, and restart it. Sometimes it takes rebooting the whole machine because it just wasn't responding to itself. You'll notice that now that I've cleaned out this div over here, the content that was gone but that was still showing is no longer showing. So that's what happened by rebooting that. So I want to make sure we're going to move forward with adding the structure from the wireframe that I created earlier. And it's pretty basic stuff. Got a header, navigation, left, center, right, footer. Pretty basic stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm not on any one of these three. I'm going to go to the section so that it's not working within a specific section of the any of the style sheets, because what you'll find later on is that when you're applying styles, they will show up within the location of the media query for whichever one of these you have highlighted, and we'll get to that. But for now, we want to have none of those highlighted because we're going to be adding the structure. I'm going to go to the source code, and what I want to do is make sure that my cursor is inside of this grid container, and I am going to insert fluid grid layout div tag, and I'm going to call this one header. And you'll notice that start new row section. This is going to be an important thing to notice, because what this is going to do is it's going to allow whether or not that's going to be a block level element that starts a new line, or whether or not it's going to float up next to other elements. So I click OK, and you'll notice that it adds me a div called header that's visible up here as well, and it says this is the content for layout div tag header. And I'm just going to leave that text in there right now. Going back to my styles, my wireframe, I'm going to add the div of navigation, and I'm actually going to use nav because that is the HTML5 standard. So I'm going to call that one nav, and again you see I'm starting a new row, and so that places it underneath that. Now you'll notice that there's no styling, so right now they're all taking up the whole width. And then again, making sure I'm outside of the nav div, I'm going to add three: the left, the center, and the right, and so that I'm all prepared to go forward. So I'm going to do these one at a time. Okay, on the first one, I want it to start on a new row. And that creates it in there. In this second one, I don't want this to start on a new row because these things are designed to sit beside each other. I'm going to choose center. And you'll notice that changes. All the rest of these are tied to the edge of the grid. That one pops in, and that's because I took out that start on new row element from that. So this is going to naturally want to try and float up next to the other ones, and we'll take a look at that in a few minutes after I finish setting up my basic structure of my page. So that was the center. I want to do right. And again, you'll notice that that one is highlighted yellow, and it's tabbed in just a little bit to show you that that's going to be moving in a bit from where it belongs. And then I need to do my footer. And this one will start a new row. And you'll see that that pops back out. So nothing exciting to see here. Sort of basic. I went to live view, kind of showing you what it looks like. I'll hide that float grid layout. And nothing really exciting to see yet because I haven't applied any real content or presentation to it yet. So I'm turning my grid back on. When I go to the mobile, you'll see that that's what it looks like in the 4 panel or 4 column. There's the 8 column and of course the 12 column. I can turn off those codes, and because everything is going to fit within the 4 columns at this point, it really isn't going to be much different. So we're going to need to change that. And I'm going to turn my my guides back on just to help me to see what's going on and to help you to see what's going on. So now we've created our basic structure, and that basic structure applies at all 3 levels. So now to better understand what has happened, let's go into our responsive test style sheet, which is, as you recall, the main style sheet that we're using for the presentation. And you'll notice that a lot of information has been added. Within the mobile layout section, there has been a section added for each of the divs that has been created. And they basically, because all we're really establishing is block level elements at this point, they give each of those the property of block. So there's header. It's got clear both, float left, margin left 0, width 100%, and display is block. So that's the basic rules that have to be in place for this, is clear, float, margin, width, and display. Nav is identical, as is left. Now when we get to center, it changes a little bit. In left we've got clear both. In center we've got clear none. And both of them have a float left. And in the right one it also has clear none. That's because it's designed for these 3 columns to float beside each other, to sit beside each other in the page, as was seen in the wireframe, depending upon how much width is available to them. Now that is in the mobile, so the 480 pixel below. When we move down to the tablet layout, you'll see that the rules are the same except for the size of the margins and those other things that are determined on mathematical scales. And again, the same thing is the circumstance with the others. So we've got clear, none, float, left, and on all 3 of those. So at this point, the rules, other than the math that makes the margins and the widths of the different columns, is identical between all of them. So the only thing that the rules are doing at this point are changing the way that it, the widths and the way that it presents the columns in those widths. So let's go into our mobile, and since that is the first thing in the Cascade, what I want to do is I want to go to this grid container, and I'm going to go to the source code to work from this. I want to go to the grid container, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm selecting the clear fix, and I'm going to create a new rule, or new CSS style. And so when I come in here, you'll see that it has the class of grid container clear fix. So that's 2 classes working in there. It says boilerplate.css. that is not where I want this. I don't want to edit the boilerplate CSS at any time. I want that to stay the same because that's the default for all the browsers. I want to work in the responsive test.css. So I click on that and then I click OK. And what I want to do is I'm going to keep this simple. I'm just going to change the background color. So for now I'm going to change the background color to red. And that's all I'm going to do. And you'll notice that in everything that exists, everywhere where there is content, it creates that background color of red. And so I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to go back to my responsive test.css and let's look and see what has happened. And what I find when I come to my responsive test.css is that it didn't just apply that to the mobile, it applied it at the very last line of the style sheet. So that's going to override everything. I want that to be inside of the mobile only section. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and I'm going to come up in here and I'm going to go to the mobile layout and I'm going to go to grid container and let's see if we can apply it to just that one. Now you'll notice again before we go into this that there are three different sets of rules for grid container. There's the one for the mobile, the one for the tablet, and the one for the full screen. So we want to make sure that for now this applies just it is applied at the mobile level. So I'm going to select this and open it in this way. That way I know that I'm working with the right instance of it. You'll also see if I had come in down here, there's another grid container, and then there would be a third one down there. I can't access it while this window is open, so I'll just show you. There's the grid container now. That's the one at the top, and this corresponds to the order here. So there's the grid container there that I have selected. Then there's the class of grid container there as well, and you'll notice that this window dropped down to the media only. And then there's the third one that drops down to the full screen. So I want to make sure that I am working in the top one, the one that applies to the mobile layout. And now I want to give it that background color. And we see that that background color applies here. Now when we go to our live view, at the mobile level it's red, at the tablet level it's still red, and at the full screen level it's still red. So what we want to do is let's go in here and let's change the color at the second level, at the tablet level. So I grab the grid container class at the tablet level. I'm going to open that again, and I'm just double clicking that. I'm going to go to background, and now I'm going to change that background color to blue. And what do you think is going to happen? Why didn't it change to blue? Because you'll notice I'm still at the mobile size. So at the mobile size, which comes higher in the cascade, because I would be looking at this with a mobile device, it's still seeing that background color of red. If when I switch to the tablet size though, you'll notice that the background color turns to blue, and that's because looking at the cascade we're using the same class, but because it is being read later for the tablet, when we get, and these rules are only being applied once it has a minimum width of 481 pixels. Once it reaches that 481 pixel minimum, then it overrides the previous color of red with this color of blue. And the same thing will happen if we change at the next level, grid container, and I change that to, and we'll just again keeping the background, we'll change that to, yeah, I can't go chartreuse. Let's just do that kind of green. It's ugly, but. And so now, again, when we look at it at the mobile size, it's red. When we look at the tablet size, it's blue. But when we go to the full screen size, it's got that sort of greenish background color that I just applied. And that is how this works. Now, everything builds on top of that. And so that's how we're going to proceed from this in the next video. But that understanding of how that cascade works to override as we're going to the larger formats is crucial for you to understand in order for you to understand the responsive grid.